All
Scott,
right.
thank you so much for coming on the Easy Prey podcast. I appreciate your time this afternoon. Can you give me a
Yeah,
little
honored to be on.
Can you give me a little background about how you got into cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm running a company, Berkeley Varitronic Systems. We're based out of central New Jersey, Metuchen, New Jersey. We're a 48-year-old company, and we develop a lot of unique niche security products. Most of them are tied with wireless, and it's used to secure a boardroom. It's used to secure a DoD facility, perhaps, to where it's protecting classified information, so wireless won't get in. So we really understand in our business how mobile phones work and smart.
And I've lost you.
It's helped. I think we lost you there. You're
Skype,
back? Yeah.
Skype totally cut out for a moment.
Yeah, no problem.
So
Should I start over or just continue on?
I'll just ask you that again, and the wonders of
Yeah, sure.
editors will take care of it.
All right.
Scott, can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved in cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the past 10 years or so, especially, Berkeley Varitronic Systems, my company, we've been focusing on wireless test tools that are usually tied to security, keeping facilities secure from any type of wireless threat. And a lot of it is tied to obviously mobile phones, smartphones, where there's Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and of course the regular 3G, 4G, fourth generation technology of communications. And we understand the vulnerabilities and how cyber criminals can use that to get into different types of computer networks or compromise classified information, be it a government DoD facility or a corporate boardroom, whatever the case may be. So as I educated people more and more over the years, what started to happen was I had a target that was put on my back. In other words, the cyber criminals want to silence you. They don't want you to share tips or expertise how to keep companies secure or even individuals or small business owners. So the more that I started sharing information, the more they started to go after me. And that's really what was kind of the genesis of my first book, Hacked Again. They started going after my Twitter account and took that down. They went after email. They did repeated DDoS attacks to our online store, so we didn't have online commerce all of a sudden. It was terrible. Repeated credit card and debit card, both in the company as well as myself personally, I was being attacked. Reissue the card, the process goes on, and finally one morning I came in and checked the bank, the online bank for our company, and $65,000 was taken out of the account. And I said, this is serious. And of course, it became a federal investigation, a lot of paperwork and time and effort with phone calls and everything under the sun just to get all the money back. I finally did get the money back, but in the process, I learned as a security company, there were some fundamental things that we did wrong. So I had to kind of relearn some of the things and re-implement best practices within the company and myself personally. And a fair amount of that is what I share when I speak to audiences, when I educate, when I write in the books such as Hacked Again or the second book, Cybersecurity is Everybody's Business. Hopefully readers can kind of connect with me and say, geez, yeah, I really do need to make a more secure password, or I shouldn't reuse the same password across multiple sites because here's somebody that was dumb enough to do it and look at the outcome. So I try to share my personal story and say, hey, dummy here, don't do what I did or else you're going to have to go through this pain.
Yeah, I think all of us, if you'd asked anyone who had an account, more than 10 years ago, it was a very common thing for, hey, I have maybe a half a dozen different passwords I use for different things, and most people probably had one or two. And it's interesting because we would think at the time, like, well, I'm secure, I'm safe, because I've got this really great password, but we never really thought about data breaches and, well, what if that password actually got out there? Is that kind of what the genesis of how the access was gained to your accounts?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, to your point, I think the world of cyber criminals has changed so greatly because when they compromise this information, they used to be able to say, okay, I'm going to target this particular account and try to do some damage. Now it's changed where now there's layers of criminals and criminal activity where they will go to the dark web and they will now sell it. So just because the guy steals your password, your login credentials, your social security number, anything maybe to compromise your identity, doesn't mean he's going to go do that. He's going to now repackage it, repurpose it, put it on the dark web so he can monetize it. And I think that once there's a means to not only do that and monetize it, and there's a market, so now you've got kind of supply and demand there that come into play as a regular business, things happen and people make a lot of money. And then on top of it, just the world of the dark web, it's so interesting because it allows anonymity. And I always use the analogy of a typical criminal. They pull out a gun and they put a mask on their face, they rob a bank, they assess the risk. What are the chances I'm going to get caught? By a camera, someone spots me, I get shot, the getaway car doesn't start up, or whatever happens, the money's tainted and blows up and it's blue in my face. Those are very different risk assessments that they have to make if they're still brave enough to go in and try to rob a physical bank. Cyber criminals, the ability to encrypt data, to use the Tor network, to have traffic rerouted to different IP addresses in the dark web, to pay for things, commerce by Bitcoin, which is digital currency that doesn't trace it back to a person per se. That anonymity is extremely powerful in the criminal empire. And I think we've seen a lot of criminal gangs get educated in cyberspace just to conduct criminal activity, and they're monetizing on it and saying, wow, if I buy this campaign to launch ransomware against maybe targeted hospitals, I can make a lot of money. There's a lot of value in that. So I think when they look at dollars and cents, they're very attractive to the world of cybercrime.
It sounds like it's gotten more beyond just an individual committing crime and hacking and doing things, but it's now become its own its own business ecosystem around committing electronic crime.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look at it kind of like we look at Amazon and the success of that. Nobody could argue with it. It's a great way to buy goods and shop prices, the convenience of it, the easy button that you press. That's kind of what I'm starting to see with the dark web. So with anything else, what do you do in the world of cybercrime? What do you do to counter it is really, I think, sniffing and doing dark web audits. I've been working closely, and I'm an advisory board member of a company called Cyberlytica, and they provide services, and it's really basically looking at your login credentials and personal information about yourself, maybe your email and other things, to see if it shows up on the dark web to give you an instant alert. And that's what the powerful thing is. Now people can be proactive. Mm-hmm. They can actually take intelligent, actionable item when they say, wow, my information is down on the dark web. That means in the not too distant future, it may be sold and my credit card will be compromised or my account will be compromised. So it's kind of nice to see the world of cybercrime. They're getting some fight back against them because people are taking this actionable item with different companies doing dark web audits, and the software is getting much more efficient, and tying that in with a little bit of machine learning, artificial intelligence, you'll now get a phone call that, hey, this is suspicious activity on your credit card. Why? Because they're using some of the software and some of these algorithms to determine it's unlikely Scott just bought a new pair of slippers in Alaska when I just saw a transaction, he was in New Jersey yesterday at the gas station. So I think that makes a big difference, using technology to fight back. So I'm kind of excited about that for the future.
Definitely, I agree with that. I've been pretty impressed with the credit card companies within the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I seem to consistently get a credit card compromised about 3 days before I go on an international trip and scrambling to get it taken care of. But the other thing I'm always impressed by is that the fraud amounts have gotten smaller and smaller on the credit card transactions that have happened, but the banks have gotten better and better at spotting them. And I was really surprised a while back. I got a phone call or an alert from the bank saying, hey, there was this $100 transaction at a hardware store that was within like 20 miles of where I lived. And we stopped the transaction because we believe it's fraudulent. And there was no other suspicious activity on my account. And I was like, how did they know that transaction? And it was a hardware store that not that particular location, but a chain that I would frequent, so it was not outside my normal purchasing habits, but somehow they identified that specific transaction and were able to stop it.
That's pretty neat. And it could be also some of the AI modeling, they're looking at patterns. In other words, if one particular cash register, there was a skimmer in the credit card reader, and that day maybe there were 500 cards that were skimmed, and a couple of them were deemed fraudulent. Now they could trace that back and narrow the subset down and say, high probability, whatever, this bank here, let's contact these 100 customers because there's a good chance it's fraudulent. Let's just be better to be safe than sorry. And I think they're using some of those techniques in their modeling, and it's working really good. The challenge is probably to get the skimmers out before it even happens. And that's an area I've done a ton of research with, and we've done some development. We have a product called SkimScan, which is kind of cool, that checks to see if there's a second read head, an actual skimmer placed inside the retail readers, the point-of-sale readers, be it at the gas pump, be it in an ATM machine where you put your debit card in, or at your Macy's or any other retail location, as well as Bluetooth skimmers. So we've actually identified and got from the wild known addresses of really fraudulent Bluetooth skimmers that are placed out there compromising cards, and then our little scanner will actually look for those addresses and alert somebody so they can constantly pull the skimmers out before the credit cards are compromised. So it's a really exciting industry, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry with cyber criminals taking money in each and every day. So very scary and concerning.
Every little way they possibly can.
Oh, yeah. Terrible.
So if you don't know the answer to this, that's fine. Is there a reason why credit card processors or credit card companies in the U.S. haven't gone to chip and pin in the way they have in Canada and most of Europe? Here in the U.S., we're still, there was the chip on the card, but it's basically magnetic stripe. There's really no additional security on those things. So is there a reason why the card companies haven't gone to that additional authorization level here in the U.S.?
Well, a lot of it has to do with money. At the end of the day, I always say follow the money trail, and it kind of tells you why things are done or not done. First of all, in the U.S. especially, we've got the best laws for liability protection if our credit card is compromised. Most of your guests that are watching are probably going to say, or listening, are going to say, yeah, my credit card is compromised a couple times a year, but I always get my money back. They always issue a new card really quick. You're only held liable for $50. Most of the time, I got a good relationship with my bank and they waive the fees. Why does that all happen? Because of the laws in place are really good, number one. But the bank also doesn't want to lose you as a customer. Where do they make their money? High interest rates. At some point, maybe it's a COVID crisis or just, somebody loses a job or whatever, they start to rack up debt on their credit card. That is a lot of money for a bank. And if they're charging 18% interest, and if they're paying 4% interest to cover the cost of all the credit card fraud from cyber criminals, they're willing to take that. And, let's cover the cost, eat the loss, reissue the card. Let's just get this customer going because they want to keep that money coming in. So I think that's really the fundamental reason that it's happening so much. You're right, though. To your point, you can get a chip and pin card. And I always ask people, especially when I present, I say, how many of you have chip and pin card? And almost 100% of everybody's hands go up. And I say, how many of you stick that in front of the machine and actually enter a PIN number in? And you get a little bit of hands that go up here and there. Well, some of the places I do, but not all the places. So it's really not true chip and pin. It's chip and signature.
Yeah.
We're signing Mickey Mouse. It passes through. It is safer than traditional mag stripes that are on the cards where you swipe the card, because there's some security that's implemented on chip and pin that is obviously better, but they're not fully implementing chip and pin. If they forced me to enter a pin in every time, I'd feel really good as a consumer. What do I do instead? I use Apple Pay where it's accepted. Google Wallet, Apple Pay, tokenized, end-to-end encryption. They're not at any point sending your credit card or personal information during that transaction. It's fast, it's secure, it works. It doesn't have widespread adoption, though. Yeah. The cost to upgrade the POS systems for retail would be astronomical. I look at gas stations. That's a typical example. How many times do you go to the gas pump and they have a chip and pin card reader. Very few.
Yeah.
Yet there's a million and a half gas pumps out there. Why? Because there's no federal law forcing them to upgrade to chip and pin. Why? Because the petroleum industry, the issuing banks, it's kind of a monopoly, and until they're willing to say you have to do it. Now, October 2020, the law goes into effect, they got to start upgrading. Yeah. So slowly banks are going to be working with the petroleum industry, working with gas stations to upgrade the security to make it better. That's all good. But the time it takes to upgrade all those will take a few years.
Yeah.
So when you're at a gas station, use cash if you're afraid of a skimmer. Use common sense. If things look like they're tampered with, be careful, use caution. But most of the newer threats in gas pumps are all Bluetooth skimmers. So they buy a common key. There's 6 of them out there in the wild. You could buy it on eBay for $15. Open the machine, plug a Bluetooth skimmer and lock it. 10 seconds. You're in business. Now nobody ever has to come back to the machine. They simply drive up 50 to 75 feet away with a laptop. They download typically 200 cards a day, and I think the average gas pump with a Bluetooth skimmer in it nets about $114,000 before they find the skimmer. Wow. So you see how lucrative that problem or that crime is for cyber criminals. You place it once, you pay someone to go put these in hundreds of pumps, and all you got to do is drive your rounds each day or hire someone to do it, collect that. All those stolen credit cards, they go back and burn fresh cards at night and go shopping. Typically, they go buy gift cards. Yeah. So they buy $100 gift cards at the store. They hand it to someone, say, give me $50, here's a $100 gift card, it's a gift for you, and then they're getting cash. And it kind of that little pyramid scheme that they're using. Very effective, hard to spot, hard to stop.
Yeah, so earlier you were talking about the dark web and dark web audits, credit card numbers showing up in the dark web. So for probably a lot of the audience, everybody hears, you're watching your favorite episode of NCIS, and let me jump on the dark web and find that for you. As if everything is just magically available right in an instant. But what actually is the dark web for our audience?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to explain it maybe in a simpler term. A lot of times everybody uses the analogy of an iceberg. We all know what an iceberg is. You got kind of the point or the tip of the iceberg above the water. And that's kind of the surface web, what we're all used to. We go on to do a Google search or go to buy something online. We're up here at the surface web. Below that are tons and tons of information, repositories of databases and lists and links and all kinds of other stuff that really don't make a whole lot of sense to anybody working at the surface web. But there's also websites and other portions of information down there that are accessible only if you know the specific address. So these are really kind of unindexed searches that you can do, or specific URLs that you put in. To access it, you don't go to Google to jump into the dark web. You have to use what's called a Tor browser. It was designed and developed by the United States Navy, and it was really used so dissidents could communicate, military could communicate, and stay anonymous. Because it bounces around all of the traffic, so nobody could say, hey, the origin of this computer is here in Metuchen, New Jersey, because one minute it looks like it's in India, then it looks like it's in Texas, so it makes it hard to track the guy down. Plus they encrypt it, which again allows somebody to stay anonymous. So it allows for anonymous communication. It's this underbelly of specific sites that you can access, and again, it's not all bad stuff. And when people classify it and say the dark web, the deep web, it's not all bad things down there. A lot of it's just information that supports the surface web. So it's a lot of good stuff. It's the small percentage of stuff that's down there, these 10,000 plus sites, let's call it, that are nothing but trash. They're selling guns and child and pornography and list of stolen credit cards and identity and so on and so forth. Anybody can access it by downloading free software, the Tor browser. I have it on my laptop, so I go there occasionally when I'm doing research, and I could find this information. You find lists and repository of stolen credit cards and identity theft, and they put sample free cases out there that you can download to test. And that's why often I always caution people, if you see your credit card as a small transaction, 50 cents or $1, it could likely be that it's on the dark web and somebody's posted it for somebody to test. And a cyber criminal goes, let me see how fresh this list is. It's 10,000 credit cards for $1,000. Let me test a couple of them and run $1 or two. And they say, ooh, it went through. This list is a fresh stolen list. Let me buy it and spend $1,000. So that's kind of how, in simple terms, the dark web survives and works and thrives with the world of cyber criminals.
Gotcha. So it's not that it's some inherently evil place, but it's just a matter of that additional level of privacy is used inappropriately by those who want to steal.
yeah, exactly. It makes it very convenient. It was kind of the analogy about cops and robbers and robbing banks and things like that I mentioned before. Since the transactions are typically tied, I think all of them that I've seen for the most part, cryptocurrency, it gives you that added layer of anonymity and distances you from getting caught. It makes it so attractive. I always ask myself this: if I was, I don't know, a cyber criminal in the basement of Romania sitting in my pajamas, and I say, wow, I could make $100,000-$200,000 a year right out of high school, or I could try to struggle and go to college and get deep in debt and get a job just to pay for that, making peanuts an hour, what would I choose? That's, I think, the challenge that a lot of people that are a little bit tech savvy run across around the globe. And again, I'm just mentioning Romania because that's a hotbed of cyber activity, but it could be anywhere. It could be in the United States, it could be in Russia, it could be in China, it could be any country has this same fundamental problem. And that's what's hard for law enforcement. How do they combat that problem? Well, they're doing good at it. I mean, the FBI has done some amazing things monitoring this information. And 9 out of 10 times, if you look at all the major cyber criminals, how are they caught? I find fascinating. Social media. They brag. Bragging rights, big egos, and they spill the beans, and then they trace it back to them, and they usually nail them. So if cyber criminals are listening to this, stop bragging so much on social media because you will be caught.
That's not the point of the podcast, is tell the bad guys how to do it, though.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things the rest of us should be doing? I mean, you talked about checking boardrooms for wireless threats. You talked about dark web audits, credit card transactions. And what should we have the warning signs that we're kind of like, maybe we have been hacked and we just don't know it yet, type of warning signs?
Sure. Well, number one, I always tell people, some people get this kind of complacency. They read the breach headlines again and again and again and say, why bother? I hear that often when I'm talking to people. It could be a friend, a coworker, it could be an audience of even cybersecurity professionals. Don't be complacent. Start out by doing best practices across the board in your personal life, within your business, and then you could start striving to get a more secure stance against these cyber criminals. So you have to almost empower yourself and say, hey, I'm going to fight back. And I always use the analogy, best thing to do is layers of security. And I liken it to your home. Everybody's got a little toggle on your door, but you add a deadbolt, you add an alarm system, you add a camera, you add the fake alarm stickers and the Fido bowl, whatever it takes to kind of deter the would-be thief to break into your house. Do the same thing in the world of cybersecurity. Instead of just logging onto your bank account with your username and your password, think about having an additional layer of security. Two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication is a huge step. It's not perfect. Nothing's 100% secure. However, when you take all those physical things within your home to prevent a thief from breaking in, they deter him to the guy next door. Same thing in cybersecurity. Yeah. They start to try to hack, and they're going to say, oh, he's got multi-factor authentication. Oh, he's using encryption. He's doing this. He's doing that. I'm going to go get an easy target because there's millions of people that are doing nothing. They're still using password 123. Those are the targets that they're going to keep exploiting until enough time has gone by where they have to up their game and try the harder things. So, do the best practices always. And the common sense, we talked about social media a little while ago. I personally don't put out my actual birth date on social media. I always tell people, different birth date when you set up your Twitter account, then your LinkedIn account, then this, then that. Why? Because that's one of the critical pieces of information that's going to be used when somebody tries to compromise your identity. Yep. The second that that phone call is made to the issuing bank and they're trying to do something and they say, wait, that's not the right birth date, click, hang up. So common sense things a lot of us just forget to do. Freezing your credit. I can't tell you how many people I talk to and they're like, yeah, I got to get around to doing that. Nobody wants to do it because it's such a pain. I did it myself. It took a little more than an hour. It's a nuisance. I had to take out a card for something else, and it didn't work. I got denied. I said, how could that be? Oh, my credit's frozen. Now I got to unfreeze it or thaw it. Now I got to go through that ordeal. So is it a pain? Yes. And usually we have to balance out trading, is it convenient or is it secure? Finding that fine line and always weighing towards security, taking the extra time, can do a wonder of things. Another thing I always tell people, encourage people, when you're setting up accounts, especially a bank account, a stock account, and you get those stupid security challenge questions, what high school did you attend, and what's your mother's maiden name? Guess what? Anybody could find any of that information out just by a couple quick searches on the internet. Instead, use that as an opportunity to use that as a layer of security. Put in a unique password. Even if you put the password 1234 are there, that would be 100 times more secure than putting Edison High School as the actual high school that you attended. That would be a mistake because cyber thieves can find that information readily at their fingertips. So I always tell people, instead of getting overwhelmed with too much detail about cybersecurity, focus on the basics, what's in your control. It doesn't cost you much money. Keep it simple. Start with that. After you get that established and set up, then you start thinking about things like a VPN and encryption and data that's being in transit, and how do you handle the next level of cybersecurity. But start at the basics. You'll feel strong and empowered to say, they don't got me. They're not compromising my credit card, my computer. I'm not getting keyloggers. You could fight back against those things initially, then take it to the next level. Otherwise, I think what happens is you will get complacent because you're just overwhelmed and you'll do nothing, which is what cyber criminals want you to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with the hassles and the benefits of freezing your credit. A while back, my wife and I were going to buy a new car, and we had the cash to do it, so we went to the dealership and let me write a check. And they're like, oh, no, we don't take checks. So, we don't take checks. Well, let me wire the money to you. Oh, we don't do that. I'm like, what they really wanted is, well, okay, fine, we can take a check, but we still want to do all of, you still need to fill out a credit application. And I was like, I got to go home, unlock my credit, unlock my wife's credit, unfreeze it, make sure to set it to refreeze after a certain number of days.
Yeah,
it's definitely a challenge. It's a nuisance. But I think for most people, it's, well, how many times a year are we really opening up a new credit account? Most of us
and that's
probably
really
not getting a new credit account every month or every couple of weeks. So while it might take a half an hour or an hour of our time to do it once a year, it's better than the hassles that you have to go through if your credit gets compromised. Someone opens it,
exactly.
And you got to spend hours chasing it down.
And you can ask the credit card company, if they're going to do a credit check, some basic information to make their job easier and your job easier. You could say, can I ask you, what credit agency are you going to check my credit against? And they may say, oh, well, we check with Equifax. Okay, I will unfreeze my credit for Equifax only, and I could set it up with a few, so in 10 days it refreezes.
Yep.
So it's yet not another long call, so just to simplify the process, and that works pretty good.
Yep, and that's what we do. Is like, I know I need it just for 48 hours, so you better get it done quick.
Yeah, move it or lose it.
So I'm curious, you were talking about, the variety of things that happened to you of getting hacked and eventually getting the money back. What was kind of that process, and how much time and effort did you have to spend as part of that investigation to get the money back? Were you actually able to figure out who it was?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, and maybe to the point, I'll talk just about the $65,000 that was taken from my checking account, because that to me was the kind of the unforgivable sin, let's say. In the process of it took months. Unfortunately, the whole process and investigation never gives you full clarity on exactly what happened. But from the understanding that I finally was able to get out of the bank, it happened through the bank by somebody impersonating to be a teller. And what I did learn in the process during and more so afterward in my research is a lot of people don't realize how banking works. But cyber criminals learn quickly and they share that information. And once they're able to compromise the network in a bank, they'll get in there and they don't just start stealing money. They'll observe it for months. And they'll observe patterns of certain tellers. And they'll start collecting their ID, their password, all the information that they use to access accounts and to move money around. And they also get skillful in creating deceptive accounts. And that was kind of the case what happened. And when I approached the bank and the investigators, I said, I would like to know exactly who took the money out of my account and specifically what account it went to and what the name was on that account. And they said, sir, we're not going to tell you that information. That's private. And I said, well, wait a minute. They breached my company's account. I said, the law requires you divulge that information. They said, no, it doesn't. I said, yes, it does. We'll get back to you. Then they called back and said, you know what, you're right, sir. Do you have a pen handy? Here's the account number it went to. Here's the individual it went to. And we'll tell you the reason that was put down for the actual wire transfer, because there were internal wire transfers that totaled $65,000 that was taken out of my account. One of them, interestingly enough, was a woman that was claimed to be out of Cherry Hill, and it was to close off the final payment for her mortgage. And I don't know, something like $20-something thousand that was stolen out and used for that. That was the claim. Now, the interesting part, all the names that the bank gave me, I determined were fictitious accounts that were then closed out later on. So they do is create fake accounts, siphon money, steal money from multiple people within a bank, and they quickly close them out. So working with federal investigators in the bank would give me that limited amount of information with a lot of pressure on them. I don't think the average person that starts asking questions gets much resolve other than the bank acquiesces and says, hey, we got your money back, here it is, go away happy. That to me kind of left me a little depressed, thinking how often this does happen and how many people don't fight to get that information. Now, in addition, I took that information with some colleagues that I work with out of a company in Israel, and they dug in for me and used those names and some of the accounts to see if any of it appeared on the dark web. So I was able to also kind of cross-correlate and say, these were actually fictitious accounts that were created, money siphoned through them, then closed out. And again, the cyber thieves did a good job to keep themselves completely anonymous. I could not say it was this cyber thief that did it. Mm-hmm. However, putting all the pieces together, I did identify one of the cyber thieves on my Twitter account. I got acknowledgement, yes, they're in the dark web, yes, they steal information, yes, they target security practitioners such as yourself. So at least I got a glimpse into one of the personalities. But as far as trying to hunt them down and get justice, I couldn't. I think most people honestly can't. And that to me is very disturbing. I'm hoping to change that a little bit by maybe empowering people, educating people, and working with other companies that are in the industry to kind of fight back. But it is, for the most part, it can be a losing battle. But you do feel good at least. There's some solace when you say, well, I got my money back, and more importantly, it's not going to happen to me again. Now I'm going to strengthen everything. And that's what I'm hoping people will do, at least if they get anything from when I try to share or encourage with them. It's not hopeless. Nothing's 100% secure, but it is not hopeless. You can do stuff to prevent it from happening to you.
Yeah. I know one of the dangers is when, if someone tricks you into sending the money, that it's now well, sir, you sent the money. And no longer, well, it was our internal system that was hacked, so absolutely we're going to make it right because we have legal obligation to make you whole. But if you as the customer decided to send all your money off to somebody, that's not our fault, and we're not gonna help you at that point. Yeah,
and that's a huge problem. I've identified in just the past 9 months 4 instances where my email has been spoofed, and it's my signature, Scott Schober, President CEO, Berkeley Varitronics, and it's a request. And this I thought was interesting. In one of the particular cases, we have 70 resellers internationally. This cyber criminal wrote to each of them and asked, basically saying, hey, our bank account changed, trying to pretend they're Berkeley Varitronics, and here's our new bank account, routing number, and blah, blah, blah. Can you place an advance payment for that large order that's coming through for blah, 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 this many, tens of thousands of dollars? The good news is, I think out of those 70, I had 8 of the resellers immediately, within a half hour of them receiving it, reach out to me, texting me, calling me, and emailing me saying, is this legit? This doesn't look like something that you would ask. And I thanked them all. I said, thank you. And then I had to inform the others, hey, this is not me. Da, da, da. And there were a few minor tells that were in the email, and it was nice to see that our resellers, again, they're in the world of cybersecurity too, so they're pretty savvy. They said, this doesn't look like you because boom, boom, boom. And I said, thank you. You understand it. You got it. You weren't duped. You weren't fooled. There were a percentage of them that did respond to them and asked a few more questions, and when do you need the money by? And I'm like, ah. So it really helps you appreciate, you can't be too trusting to anyone. Question everything, and don't use the means of communication. If it's email, get outside the world of email and text or phone call, do something, go to old school, send a fax, do something that will kind of validate, yes, this is me, and yes, I want this money transferred for this amount. So if you question the process, usually you'll prevent it from, taking it to fruition.
Yeah, that has been like, I have looked at a number of those types of high-profile cases where if the person had just verified outside of the method of the initial communication, they would have found out. It was the original email coming in was from a misspelling of the email address. The text message that came in really wasn't from the boss asking them to go out and buy gift cards for all the staff because they've done such a good job.
Yeah. Billy and I are laughing because that's what he came up to me one day and said, are you buying me gift cards? We had that scam here as well. So it really, they're targeting everyone. And that's kind of the interesting thing. I always approach it and say, it's kind of like spam. Spam just goes out there. Every day, billions of emails go out there. They don't really know their victims. And then there's more, focused phishing attacks or whaling attacks where they're going after CEOs and wire transfer. So you almost have to look at the spectrum of where the attack is, break it down and analyze it. And I know the average person's hearing this going, I don't got time for this. Unfortunately, you kind of have to take a few minutes and not be too quick to click on anything or be too quick to transfer that money. Because, man, once it happens, whew. I think I share an example of that with some of the credit card fraud when we ship something to Indonesia in my book. And a lot of it has to do with timing and at what point do you question things. And, I think it's important for everyone that's listening and watching, take a few minutes to question everything, even if it's your spouse or whatever. It may appear to be them, but it could be somebody spoofing their email or their text or their phone call. So use caution.
One of my first online ventures, I was selling books, competing against Amazon. And I was
they won.
Yeah, they won. I was really excited. This one December, I got the biggest order I'd ever received. I was doing maybe $10,000 in sales a month across all my orders, and this one order came in for a couple $1,000s, and I'm like, wow, my business is really growing. And so I process the credit card, ship it under their FedEx account, and I'm like, wow, this was the easiest thing. And then later on, the credit card charge gets reversed. Find out that because it was a stolen credit card. The FedEx account was a stolen FedEx account number. And so it was like, you just, anything that seems to be outside of your norm, you really have to, hold the enthusiasm, hold the excitement, and go, well, is this a legitimate, our biggest customer ever? Is it?
Yeah. Question everything. I had one, I was doing some international travel. While I was out of the office, a check came in for $82,000 for an order. Everyone looked at it and said, what the heck is this for? Oh, Scott must have quoted it. He didn't give me a copy of the quote. I have nothing to we always try to align it to the quote, to the purchase order, to the salesman, qualify everything before we do anything. They didn't want to do it, and they said, well, we'll just put it in the bank and we'll explain it when he gets home. I come back a week later, and I'm looking on my desk and say, what is this for? And I go ask him and say, oh, we thought you initiated this and quoted it and sold it to her. I don't know who it's for. And sure enough, it was a complete scam. It was a fake check. And then I looked in my email and they said, oh, we paid you the wrong amount. Could you just pay back this little bit? And they routed it through the Canadian bank, which takes about 5 days till it actually settles. So it's a big, giant scam. They're looking to pay the delta difference.
Yeah.
They keep that money and the big stuff just disappears. And of course, the money came back out of our account. So complete traditional scam, but it looked really convincing when I analyzed the envelope and you saw the check and the whole email. Somebody took a lot of time to analyze the way we do business, look at the size of the transaction, the way things were written. It will fool just about everyone. So I always encourage people, it's not just you, but really your entire staff that handles any of the funds, the wire, the credit cards, checks that are coming, that everybody is kind of disciplined to communicate and question everything.
And so anytime there's a new account or something happens kind of outside the normal procedure, you've got to question. I mean, that was one of the things that I've always that I've started to talk about is if you're in a small business that you need to have established procedures for how you set up new vendors, and that there's something well beyond just an email saying, hey, open up this, create an account and pay this vendor. There needs to be, again, that out of channel, out of communication, secondary piece of information. A piece of paper dropped on the accountant's desk from the person's side saying, yes, I'm authorizing this account to be created. Here's how to pay them. Here's what the average order is, or the average dollar amount. If it ever gets above this amount, it needs a verbal authorization, or things like that. And it just,
that makes a lot of sense.
And it's
the other thing, simple thing I did recently, after our account was compromised and money was taken out, I met with the bank, and I made sure when I set up a new account and security protocols, I said, I never want to have money that could be allowed to be wired out of my account without me signing a document and being here in person. And they established that. So if I do a wire transfer out of my account, I have to go to the physical bank. Here's my ID. I have to sign the document and approve it. Otherwise, money can't come out. It's a pain. Again, it's that convenience versus security. But guess what? No money's ever come out of my account again that I haven't authorized. So it works if you put those disciplined steps in there. And it works for $50 or $50,000. So that's what I think people need to realize. It's your money. When you have to go through the process of fighting to get it back and you realize how much time, effort, and cost, your time is worth something. And when you're spending months trying to chase money down to get it back on your credit card and prove things with invoices and paper trail, unless you're a really, really good bookkeeper and keep accurate notes, sometimes it's hard to do. And that money doesn't come back in your account overnight, as people sometimes think it is. So you're better to spend the time and effort up front securing things than pay for it later.
Is that the premise of your second book, Cybersecurity is Everyone's Business?
Well, I think what happened is,
needs to be involved.
Yeah, I think it's bringing it to more of a conversation now. That when things first happened to me, and I would share information, two-factor authentication, and what's a DDoS attack, and a secure password. It was kind of deer in the headlights, the conversation a few years ago. But things have changed greatly. You go post Target and Home Depot breach and so many. It's now affected everybody. It affects small business owners. It affects consumers. Everybody I talk to says, yeah, I had my credit card compromised, or yeah, I had this happen. I had my identity compromised. So it's now become literally everybody's business to take security and responsibility themselves so they're not the next victim. So I think it resonates well, but especially small business owners. I've noticed that niche. There's a lot of small business owners. They don't have the money to spend, as JP Morgan does, $500 million to secure their computer networks and train everybody. A small business owner can do practical things so they can stay much safer, though. And that's where I think it resonates well with them. And the spillover is most of that information you can use in your personal life as well as a consumer. So it helps a lot of people with it. And then the third book, Senior Cyber, the book is now completed. I'm going through the editing. I noticed again and again and again that there's this population of the elderly that cyber criminals just don't care. They're just targeting, just like the crazy cyber criminals targeting people with the stimulus and the COVID and anything else they can steal. They don't care. They just want the money. The same thing they're doing is targeting seniors and the elderly. So I'm trying to help with that book, empower them, feel comfortable using a phone, comfortable on the internet, comfortable with a computer, and not falling victim to as much of the scams and kind of being fooled out of their money that they've worked so hard for.
Yeah, you're in the golden years of your life when you enjoy the fruits of your labor. You don't want to spend your time and effort trying to recover stolen money. You want to travel and live the high life.
Yeah, enjoy life. Yep.
So, in wrapping up here, is there any way that people can learn more about you and what your company does?
Yeah, absolutely. My company, it's simply www.bvbravovictorsystems, spelled out plural.com. There we've got all kinds of wireless tools, bug sniffing tools that we're selling to, again, law enforcement. We're selling to colleges and universities, DoD agencies, pretty broad spectrum there. And then my personal website is simply my name. It's Scott Schober, SCHOBER.com. And I've got free information on there, tips you can download, and excerpts from the book, a bazillion videos, and lots of practical information that doesn't cost you any money, but it'll help you benefit so you can stay safe.
Great. We'll also make sure that we link to Hacked Again and Cybersecurity is Everybody's Business in the show notes. So if anyone who wants to get those books, they can jump onto Amazon and go ahead and download them. Scott, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Everybody stay safe.